bought the 10 most viral trending sneakers to find out if they're actually any good and how long do they have before they die out. So based off of the brand's data, Google searches, and of course social media, starting from trendy to mega trend, at number 10 we have the Puma Speedcat. So this one's actually a relatively new trend, at least compared to all of the other ones on this list. They originally dropped back in the early 2000s, and we all know currently the 2000s, or just retro shoes in general, have been the it thing for the past 5 to 10 years. Now, unlike other retro shoes that really gained a lot of popularity when they were actually brought back, these were kind of popular when they first released. I actually remember seeing a ton of people wearing these things, and also the Puma suedes. As you can kind of tell from the design, they were originally a high-performance racing shoe, and that's kind of how they feel when you actually wear them. Kind of feels like you have this tiny strip of rubber underneath your foot, and that's because that's pretty much what you have. So there is practically zero cushioning in this pair of shoes, and this outsole kind of extends up onto the back of the shoe, which makes it an incredible pair of shoes to, race in, but it's definitely not something you would buy for comfort. Overall, they are pretty decent quality, especially considering the price point of just $100. But because they are such a low profile pair of shoes, you're not really getting much shoe for that price. So what do I think of this sneaker overall, and when do I think these are gonna die out? Well, the truth is, Puma is only just getting started. With the return of Rihanna and the Fenty line collaborating with Puma, and of course A$AP Rocky also joining the team, Puma sneakers in general have been trending upwards and super popular for like the past 6 months. So I think the Puma trend in general, and more specifically the Speedcat, is only going to gain in popularity over the next couple years. But overall, as a sneaker, I'm going to rate it a 5 out of 10. Not really my thing, just a little bit too low profile. Next up, taking the number 9 spot, we have the Nike Zoom Vomero 5. Now this is a pair of sneakers I'm super familiar with. I've owned a couple different versions of them now. It's also kind of a sneaker trend that was a very slow burner. It first dropped back in 2010, and Nike kind of seemed to have these attempts at trying to make them the next it shoe, but it never really took off. You might remember the A Cold Wool collaboration from 2018. Yep, the ones with the literal trailer on the back of them. Those didn't really do much for the hype of the model. But finally, in 2022, Nike did it. They finally made the big resurgence of the Zoom Vomero 5. And it has literally just been growing in popularity until today, where it's kind of become a staple in terms of Nike products. Overall, I think people really love this pair of shoes because retro runners are the trend right now. They're also relatively affordable, and above all, super comfortable. They're also pretty decent quality, not to mention, in my opinion, I think they look really good. I also think more recently they've done some of the best versions and also the best colorways on this sneaker model. Some of my personal favorites are like the Supersonic, the Designed by Japan. Dornbeckers were pretty interesting as well. So overall, I think it's a solid pair of shoes, and I think as a trend, they still have some life left in them. But because they've kind of been in the trend cycle for a while now, I could definitely see them slightly going on the downturn. I'd give them probably a year max. So for the Vomero 5s, I'm gonna rate them a 7.5 out of 10. Taking the number 8 spot, we got the Asics 1130s. Asics is one of the biggest upsets to the sneaker industry recently, just coming in and dominating. Even though it kind of feels like Asics just came out of nowhere, they've really been chipping away at the sneaker game ever since like 2020, 2021. This was also the same time Nike decided to pull away from retailers and focus more on selling the sneakers themselves with a direct-to-consumer strategy. And what that did was leave a bunch of shelf space for these retailers, which Asics came in and swooped up. So today, if you walk into a sneaker retailer, Foot Locker, JD Sports, places like that, chances are you're going to see a ton of Asics front and center, and hardly any Dunks and Jordan 1s. That's of course if the Asics sneakers haven't already been bought up and resold on the secondary market. Now, this is yet another retro style runner, just like the Vomeros, except these came out 2 years prior in 2008. And I think because they came up so quickly, a lot of people are kind of confused as to why this pair of shoes is so hyped. Some people think that Balenciaga has something to do with it, but I think it's kind of the other way around. Like Balenciaga copied Asics instead of, Asics copying Balenciaga. But I guess to a small degree, people who do like the look of the Balenciaga shoes and want an affordable alternative, there is something like this. But I think just because the retro runner category is so popular right now, I think Asics really just fills that space so perfectly. It's also a lot more affordable than some of the other competitors, this one coming in at just $100. It's also incredibly comfortable. So overall, I think this is a solid pair of shoes, and I think probably one of the best retro runners on the market. I'm giving these an 8 out of 10. But how long will this last? Well, ultimately, I think Asics are kind of at the beginning. I think we have plenty of life left in Asics sneakers as a whole, and I think this pair of shoes at least has a couple years left in it. And number 7, this sneaker has been growing fiercely over the past year. It's the Nike Shox. Now, in my opinion, this is probably one of the more interesting sneakers on this list. It originally launched back in 2000s as this super futuristic cushioning technology. I mean, it looks pretty wild. I mean, stuff like this is kind of what all of these blogs are talking about, how like Nike has lost their magic, they've lost their innovation. And yeah, you don't really see new Nike shoes with something this crazy. Either way, the Nike Shox at this point in time is still in its early stages of fully coming back, but I do think we are right on the edge of this sneaker becoming a massive trend. I think some of the first signals of this shoe making a big return was in 2023 with the Martine Rose collaboration, and soon after that, Nike started bringing back some of the older colorways like this one. And of course, they have all been selling out pretty rapidly. And you know what? I think as far as like a trending sneaker, this one is pretty cool just because of like how different they look and how unique. You don't really find many, if any, sneakers that have this kind of design to them. It's probably because Nike sued all the ones that tried, including Adidas when they first launched. And as an actual sneaker, I think they're pretty solid. They are super comfortable. I kind of prefer the look of these in comparison to the TL, so these are the R4s. But regardless, I think we're going to see a lot more colorways, more collaborations on these sneakers, and of course Nike bringing back some of the older versions as well. So yes, we're right at the beginning. We're going to be seeing a whole lot more of the Shox, and my overall rating as a sneaker, 8.5 out of 10. At number 6, we have the infamous Timberland boot. Yes, the classic IG Fit Pick pair of shoes. This one is kind of relatively new in terms of a trend. It's been about a year now that Timberlands really took off. I think it was like last winter, and they've kind of stuck around. Now, most people know quite a lot about the Timberland boot. I mean, it's been around since 1973, but I think the main point of where it got super popular was, of course, through the hip-hop scene. Kind of became a staple for New York rappers and really cemented itself in that whole culture. And I don't think it's really surprising that they are a trend now and super popular, because I mean, 90s fashion in general is super popular right now. But overall, as a trend, I've only really seen people put very specific outfits together with this pair of shoes. Like, they kind of all look the same. There's not really too much variation going on here, so I can't really see this trend lasting that much longer. I'll probably give it one more full winter season. Obviously, the boots themselves very solid in terms of quality, craftsmanship, and just overall durability, but they are definitely not very comfortable. In my opinion, I'm giving these a 4 out of 10, just not really my thing. Next up, we have another pair ready for the colder seasons. It's Uggs. Now, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but for me, Uggs literally came out of nowhere. I was scrolling StockX one day, and suddenly in the top 10 like most reselling sneakers, there was Uggs flooding that top 10 list. Uggs, originally founded in the 70s, became super popular in the 2000s, but then really took off in 2023. But the issue with Uggs as a trend is that they're only really fall winter shoes. Like, you're not really wearing Uggs during the summertime. So during the last winter, they kind of peaked and then dropped off during the summer. But guess what, guys? It's getting cold outside. Uggs are back. Probably the easiest way to look at this is just through Google searches, like how it died down and now it's starting to have this uptick. Either way, I think to Uggs' credit, they really have done a good job at diversifying their offering in terms of different models that they now have. It's not just the classic Uggs that you would picture in your head when I say Uggs. They have a bunch of different really creative silhouettes. I personally really like the Tasman Hybrid. I think that's a cool option, especially now that they've got the new Post Malone ones, which by the way, Yeezy boots. Either way, they're comfortable. They're definitely going to keep you cozy during the full winter months. So I'm going to give these a 6.5 out of 10. Oh yeah, and they have at least one more year of being in this super hyped up trend cycle. Right, next up we have the New Balance 1906R. A sneaker that probably most of you are super familiar with. At this point, it has kind of been the New Balance sneaker for a minute now. I mean, I've spoke about them plenty of times in the past as being one of my favorite New Balance models. They've been trending for probably about a year now, and they're still super hyped up to this day. They've also done a ton of collaborations on this sneaker model, and probably the most hyped up one upcoming is the Jack Harlow one dropping in the next couple weeks. So I could definitely see that one getting a ton of attention as well. But yeah, overall, it's a very solid sneaker. It just doesn't excite me that much just because it looks so similar to the 2002 R model, which is something that was trending before the 1906s. So it kind of feels like we've had this super long trend of almost the same sneaker. It also seems like New Balance has been trying to get other models in the spotlight, like the brand new New Balance 1000. So it probably has about 6 months to a year of being this insanely hyped up trend. But yeah, as a sneaker, one of the best retro runners in my opinion. Super comfortable, decent quality. Price point is kind of mid, a little bit higher. I'm gonna give these an 8 out of 10. Taking third spot, and probably the oldest sneaker on this list, maybe, it's the Onitsuka Tiger Mexico 66. And yes, as the name suggests, these were designed all the way back in 1966. Now, I think the history of this pair of shoes is so interesting and probably a good reason why it has so much lore and, I guess, hype around it. It gained a lot of popularity from film. Bruce Lee wore a variation of these. Obviously, the Kill Bill movie, which was a direct homage to Bruce Lee, kind of made them super popular as well. And then in 1977, Onitsuka Tiger merged with 2 other companies to create the brand we know today, Asics. So technically, we have another Asics sneaker on this list. So yeah, either way, there's a ton of history behind this pair of shoes. I could definitely understand why people like the lore of it. And overall, as a sneaker, it falls into the low-profile shoe category like a lot of the other ones that are trending right now. I think the history behind it is probably the most interesting to me. However, like some of the others, this has been trending for a while now, so I don't see these lasting that much longer, probably about another year. My rating would probably be 6 out of 10, heavily because of the history, but not really a sneaker for me. Coming in at number 2, we got the Adidas Campus Double O's. Man, this is a sneaker that's been trending, but it just keeps growing and growing. I actually really like the Campus. It's probably one of my favorite affordable models, especially from Adidas. It's got a cool, chunky, puffy look, which actually does lend to the comfort of them because you got so much padding around your foot. Like I said, they're affordable, $100, so I could see why a lot of people would gravitate towards this design. Now, TikTok, I think, played a big part into these becoming the super viral, trendy sneaker that we know today. And honestly, I think these are going to keep pumping for at least another year. I think we'll see more collabs and more variations on this model. My personal favorite has to be the Bad Bunny ones. Those are still just kind of underrated at this point. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna rate these a 7.5 out of 10. But at number 1, somehow, is still the Adidas Samba. Yes, even though it is gotta be on its last legs now, the Adidas Samba is still the most trending sneaker out there. In fact, it's trending so hard and becomes so popular that I think it's kind of taking a very similar turn to how the Panda Dunks went. You know, the Panda Dunks just became so popular that everybody started hating on them. Yeah, it's kind of happening to the Sambas, although Adidas is fighting tooth and nail to keep the Samba dream alive. They've been pumping out so many different versions of the Sambas, like the Specials and the Gazelles, which both became like super popular trends in and of themselves. But it's really weird. I feel like Sambas got so popular that people who liked that shoe but they didn't want to jump on the Samba bandwagon, they went for Gazelles and they went for Specials, but then they're jumping on individual bandwagons because those got so popular. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that Adidas would try their best to keep the Samba dream alive because it did kind of save them pretty heavily financially from the whole Yeezy fallout. Either way, Sambas have never really been my thing visually or practically. They're pretty damn uncomfortable, but I definitely understand why people like them. It's affordable and it's a simple, clean looking pair of shoes. But yeah, I'd say Sambas probably have about 6 months left to them before people just start moving on to other stuff. I think they have taken that kind of turn where people are kind of criticizing them for just being everywhere and in their face. But yeah, they're not bad, not amazing. For me, I'm gonna give them a 5 out of 10. But let me know in the comments which of these trending sneakers is your favorite, and if you want to check out another video, click that one right over there.